Daf Yud Amud Aleph, 3 lines from the top. Continuing on with the discussion whether a mouse takes some chametz and brings it into a house, or it takes an unknown pile and brings it into the house. So the next case is Sibarech Shel Chametz. If he had one pile of chametz, Ulafana Shnei Batim Bedukim, and in front of it were 2 houses that already been checked for chametz. He already did a bedika. Well, Achbar v'Shakal and Mouse came and he took the chametz v'layadin ilahai al, and we don't know into which of the houses that it went into. So as the Ran explains over here, this is different than the previous case, because in this case, certainly one of the houses has now chametz in it. We just don't know which one. In the previous case, we could say Shani Yomer, that we say that the chametz went into the house that didn't have bedika, and the house that had a bedika, it had matzah and not chametz. But over here, certainly in one of the houses that had a bedika, there's now chametz, and therefore question is, do you have to do another bedika? Which house? Both houses, but you can't say Shani Yomer. So now, what is it then over here? How do we treat these houses? So the Gemara says, Hainu Shnei Shvila. We can compare it to the case of Shnei Shvila, 2 paths, and the question there, the issue over there, is the Gabei Tumah. What is the case this nan? We learned in the Mishnah, Shnei Shvila, if there were 2 paths, Echad Tomei v'Echad Tor. One path, you could not cross the path without becoming Tomei. Without becoming Tomei, because the mess was lying widthwise across the street, and you couldn't travel along the street without being mile over the Tumah. So if a person went on that path, he would be Tomei. So, but there's one which is Tor, and the other path which is Tor. And a person walked one of them, and he was touching food which is Tor. And his friend came, and his friend went on the second path, and also he touched the Taharas. So the question is, which person went on which path? And therefore which taharas are tamei and which is tor. Now we have a general principle. The rule is safek tuma b'shus harabim is tahor, and it's a din deraisa. We learn out from Saita that if there's a safek tuma, but if it's in a rishus harabim, a public area, it's tor. Safek tuma b'shus hayochid is tamei. Now this is a rishus harabim. These are paths. So min ha'Torah, we should say that they're tor. They're both Tor. It's a Sofek, Tuma B'Shus Haram, and they're Tor. The question over here is, Midrabanan, are we also Matar Midrabanan or not? That's the way Taisus is learning. That this issue is over here, a Drabanan de Geshayla. What's the case? So we say as follows. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Im Nishlo Zeh B'fnei Atzma V'Zeh B'fnei Atzma. If the question was asked independently, each person asked the shaila separately. They didn't ask it together. When we say together, Rashi means the definition of together is teichidei dibur of each other. So the questions were asked separately, and the answers could be given separately. Then tahir, we say they're both tar. Shnei mivas achas tameim. But if they asked together at the same time, they're tameim. They're tamei because we can't say that definitively that they are both tohar, because it would seem to be an impossibility. Because in actual fact, one person went on the road which there was a mess, which was tamei. Therefore, in the appearance over here to say that they're both tohar has an appearance which seems to be not true. So therefore, we have to say Tomei. Again, this is Midrabanan. We have to say this is Tomei, which doesn't give an appearance of being untrue, because Tomei could mean, well, it's Tomei Misafek, so that's why it's Tomei. But to say that Tar gives it an appearance of being untrue, therefore we would not say that it is Tar. And Rav Yossi Omer ben kach u'ben kach Tomei. And Rav Yossi says that ben kach u'ben kach they're Tomei. In either event, they're tamei, since it has an appearance of being untrue, because one person certainly went on the road which there is tumah, we cannot say that they're tor, bein kach, or bein kach, we say that they're tamei. Now, Tosfos explains that the reason we talk about, and we say in the case over here, is that v'asa taharis, that he touched food which is tahar. And why don't we just say, is a person tamei, is a person tahar? Why relate it to the food that he touched? Because Tosfos says, because even if we would paskin on a person that he's tor, because sofek tuma b'rshus haram is tor, but nevertheless, we would still require midrabanan and tefillah and hazoya to be matayar, because maybe both people would touch taharas and be matamin, so we would require the tefillah anyway. However, what we're saying over here is that the gabi the taharos, so Rabbi Yehuda says the gabi things that they touched, we can say if it's the shaloi b'ifnei zeh, it's tor because savek tuma b'rshus haram is tor, and if they ask it independently, it does not have the appearance of being untrue. And therefore, we can say that it's tor. Now the Gemara clarifies this. If they ask the question at the same time, then we say that everybody agrees that they're tamei. If they ask the question at the same time, everyone agrees that they're tamei. If if they ask it independently, he says everyone would agree that they're tor. So that's not the machlekes. There's no machlekes if they ask it at the same time. There's no machlekes if they ask it independently. What is the machlekes? The machlekes is only if one person asks, but he's asking on himself, and he asks on his friend as well. He's asking what the halach would be for him and his friend. Rav Yosi says that we compare it to asking at the same time, because since the answer is given for both cases, then we are medamed to b'asachas. Rav Yehuda but Rav Yehuda says no, it's compared to lezachar zeh. Now, why is it compared to lezachar zeh? So Rashi explains, because when he asks about him and his friend, the Chacham, when we say Rabbi Yehuda says that it's Torah, the Chacham is not saying that you're Torah and your friend is Torah. What he says is that you're Torah. So a person asks about him and his friend, and the Chacham answers, he says, you're Torah. So he says, you're Torah. He doesn't answer on his friend. And by implication, he understands that his friend is Torah. But he doesn't give a direct answer and say that you're both Torah. So therefore, Rabbi Yehuda says it doesn't have an appearance of being untrue. And therefore, he can say you're Torah. By implication, your friend is Torah. And it's acceptable. But Rabbi Yosi argues on that. He's medam l'basachas. But Rabbi Yehuda would be maida that to say you're Torah and your friend is Torah, that has the appearance of being untrue, and therefore we would not be able to be matayar in such a case. So therefore, we have the analogy, we're bringing the comparison to the case over here by the houses with the chametz. Now, the mouse took the chametz. He went into one of the houses. If you ask on both of the houses, we would have to say that they have to have another bedika, because since you're asking on both at the same time, and it's certain that a mouse took chametz into one of them, we can't say that they're both boduk, that they don't have chametz. So you'd have to do a bedika. But if you ask on them independently, if you ask separately, then we could be makel. Why is that? Rashi explains, because bedika's chametz is the rabbanan, and as a sofek the rabbanan, we could be makel. So long as it does not have the appearance of being untrue, we could be makel. So if you ask on one house, we would say you don't need a bedika. And if separately, independently, there was a question on the other owner asked about a second house, the other house, we can also say that it does not need a bedika. But if you ask about them together in conjunction, if you ask them then we'd have to say you need a bedika. If you ask about your house and your friend's house, that's totally machlokes Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yosi. The Gemara continues with another case. Sofek al, sofek loy al. There's a suffix, there was chometz in a chotzer. The mouse took the chometz, it went, and it's a suffix if it went into one of the houses. The house had a bedika, there was boduk. The question is, did the mouse take the chometz into the house? So, therefore, do you need another bedikas chometz or not? Tosfos asks the kasha, this is very difficult. We had the previous case where we know that the mouse took chometz into a house. And we know that it took a chometz into a house, and we even know that it took chometz into a house that was bodek. We just don't know into which house. And therefore, but nevertheless, we say that since chometz, the requirement is a d'rabbanan, and we're makel, and we say you don't need another bedika. Well, over here, certainly we should say if we don't even know if it went into the house, we should certainly say you don't need another bedika. The Ran explains it as follows. He says, the question over here is, the issue is, do we consider the chotzer and the house to be different entities? Now, if there was chometz in a chotzer, and the mouse took the chometz, now certainly we would say, well, you have to do bedika on the whole chotzer, because maybe it took it from one end to the other. You don't say you only have to do bedika on one side of the chotzer, one corner of the chotzer. You'd say, well, the chotzer is one entity, you have to do bedika on the whole chotzer. The issue over here is there's a house that opens into the chotzer. Do we consider the house to be a separate entity? And therefore, we would say, if that's the case, you do not need another bedika. Or perhaps, no, we say that it's all part and parcel of the chotzer. And just like you have to do a bedika on the whole chotzer, you have to do a bedika on the whole house. In the previous case, the house was separate, was not part of this chotzer. So it's a separate entity. Did the mouse go into that house? It was a suffix or makel. But the issue over here is, do we consider the house and the chotzer to be one entity? And just like you have to do bedika on the whole chotzer, you'd have to do bedika on the house. So the Gemara says, Hainu bika, that's the case of a bika of an open field, uba plukta Rabbi Elazar Rabbanan. It's totally on the machlekes Rabbi Elazar Rabbanan. Now, we'll see shortly that Rashi is not geiris this, and the way he learns it's not totally on the plukta of Elazar Rabbanan. Let's see the case. This now we learned in the Mishnah, if a person goes into the open fields during the rainy season. Now, during the rainy season, people don't walk on the fields. And they don't have permission to walk on the fields because that's when the fields were planted and people walking on them would ruin the fields. So therefore, it's considered to be a rishus hayachid. And if it's a rishus hayachid, we apply the general principle, safek tumah rishus hayachid, which is tameh. So if he walked into a b'meisek shamim, v'tumah beside a plainness, and there's a tumah in a certain field, in this whole bika, one person says, I walked through this area, but I don't know if I went into the particular field that the grave was there. So this is a bika, there's many fields, and there was a kever in one field. The person said, I went into the bika, but I don't know if I went into that field. Rabbi Elazar mitar v'chom mitam. Rabbi Elazar says it's tor, and the chomim are mitam. Why is that? Shar Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Elazar said, Safik bia tor, Safik maga tuma tome. Now the way Rashi explains it is, Safik bia is tor, Safik maga tuma. If it's a suffix, whether he went into the area is tor. So if it's a suffix, whether he was in the area but touched the tuma, then it's tome. Now, suffix tuma b'rishus hayachid is tome. This is considered to be a rishus hayachid. If he went into the field where there was a kever, and it's only a suffix whether he touched there was mile on it or not, so suffix tuma b'rishus hayachid is tome. That would be clear. Rabbi Elazar says that, however, it's a sfeik over here. It's a suffix. Did he even go into that particular field? He went into the bika, but there's many fields. Perhaps he didn't even go into that field. Secondly, it's another suffix. Even if he did go into that field, did he touch the tumah? So therefore he says, suffix bia is tor. If it's a suffix, if he even went into that field, it's tor. Suffix mag is tor, suffix bia is tor. But the chachamim say that no, it's considered to be, in any event, the chachamim say that metamim. Now, the machlekes is that Rabbi Lezer says it's a sfeik sfeika. Safek if he went into the field, and even if he did he touch the tumah? The Chum say it's not a sfeik sfeika. It's one safek. Did he go into the field? Did he touch the tumah? Meaning, the way we were understanding based on the Ran is that according to Rabbi Lezer, the field in the bika is a separate entity. It's a separate entity, and therefore it's a sfeik sfeika. He went into the bika. Did he go into that field or not? And even if he went into the field, did he touch? According to Chomim, it's not a sfeik sfeika. It's one area. We treat it as one entity, and the safek is he went into the bika. That's not a safek. Did he touch the tumor or not? Then it's a safek tumor, which is tomei. Now the way Rashi explains it, he says, but in this case, where bedika's comment is a derabanan, then you do not need another bedika. So over here, we would clearly say that the house is considered a separate entity, and therefore you would not need to do another bedika. So l'chera, Rashi did not have the girsa that it's totally the machlekes Rabbi Lezer and Rabbanan, because the way he's explaining it, it's mashma clearly that over here in this case, everyone would agree that you do not need another bedika. The Gemara continues with another case. Al ubadak v'lo yashkach, a mouse. It took the chametz and went to the house. The owner went in and checked for it, searched for it, and he didn't find any chametz. Does he have to continue searching, or do we say he did a proper bedika and that's sufficient? Gemara says, "Pluk to the Rameir v'Rabbanan." It's totally on the machlekes Rameir v'Rabbanan, the following machlekes. This none we learned in the Mishnah. Hay Rameir Aimer kol Dovid shebechaskas tuma lo olam u'tumos. Anything that had a chazak of a tumah, we have to assume it's still tomei until you determine where is the tumah. So the case is that you had 3 piles of stones. There was a tumah, there was a mess in one of them. You don't know which one. He checks one pile, he doesn't find anything. So we can assume it's Torah, the other 2 are tomei. He checks the second one, he doesn't find anything, we can assume that's also Torah. The third one is tomei. He checked the third one, he didn't find anything. Now we know that tumah was there, but he checked all of them and he didn't find anything. Rameir says it had a cheskas tumah. We have to assume that they're tomei, so all 3 are tomei until you can determine where the tumah was. We have to treat it as all tomei. They say no. No, he just has to do a bedika. He checks thoroughly till he gets to a rock or virgin soil, so it wasn't plowed. If he doesn't find anything, we can assume that the tumah is no longer there, that an animal took it away. Similarly, in our case over here, if he did a proper bedika, he doesn't find any chometz, he does not have to continue searching. We can assume that an animal, a mouse, a rodent took it away, and it's no longer in the house. Rashi says that in our case, since the bedikas chometz is the Rabbanan, everyone would agree, even Rameir would agree, that once he's done the bedika, you do not have to do another bedika. Taisa says, however, that the gears over here is bepluked as Rameir v'Rabbanan. So it's mashma that according to Rameir, you cannot assume that the chometz is gone. But Taisa wonders, but what is going to be accomplished? You did a bedika, so if he does another bedika, he also won't find any chometz. So what is going to be accomplished over here? Taisa says that we're talking in this case where we say that according to Rameir, it is not considered boduk, it's only if he didn't do bittul, where it's a question of a deraisa. So over there, you cannot use the house. But if he did bittul and a chanami, then Rameir would be maida that it's considered to be boduk, and we don't assume there's chometz over there. Another case, al ubadak v'ashkach. Now, this is similar, but it's just the variation in the opposite result. He did go check, and he did find chometz. Can you assume that the chometz that he found was the chometz that the mouse brought in, and therefore you don't have to do any further bedika? Or can you not assume that, and perhaps this is a different piece of chometz? Look to the Rebbe Rishim Gamliel. It's totally on the machlekes Rebbe and Rishim Gamliel. The Tanya we learned in our brisa, Sadash and Nevid Bakever. If there was a field where there was a kever was lost, it was lost in the Vanichlas to say Tomei. A person goes into the field and he's Tomei. Safek Tuma b'shus yachid is Tome. Nimsa b'kever. If you found a kever, so you identified a kever over there, if he goes to another part of the field, he's tor. Because we can assume that the kever that was found was the kever which was nevad. It's one and the same. So the rest of the area is tor. Shani Amir Kever Shavad or Kever Shanimsa, because I can assume that the kever was lost, was the one that they found, the Rebbe. That's what Rebbe says. Rebbe Shimon Gamliel, no, Tibade Kola Sada Kula. He says you cannot assume that it's one and the same, and therefore you have to check the Kola Sada Kula. So here also, Rebbe will say you found the Chometz, it was assumed to be the same Chometz. But according to Shimon Gamliel, you can't assume that what he found was what the mouse took in. The Gemara continues with another case. A person put down 9 pieces of chametz. Now he comes back and he sees there's 10. What is the status of these 10 pieces? Do we say that it's the original 9 plus another piece that was added to it? Or do we say the original 9 are gone and they're somewhere in the house and you have to search for all of them? And these are new 10 pieces of chametz. So that's totally on pluk to the Rebbe Rabbanan. It's totally on the Machlik is Rebbe Rabbanan. It's something you will learn in the Bryce. If a person put in a mana of Meiser, money of Meiser Sheni in a box, and he comes back and he sees that there's Masayim. Now the money of Meiser Sheni, so he had produce of Meiser Sheni. It had to be taken up to Yerushalayim. He was paid with money which has to be taken up to Yerushalayim, and you purchase food with it, and it's eaten in Yerushalayim. So this money now, what is the status of this money? Does it have Kedushas Meiser Sheni? And does it have another mana which is Chulin? Or is this entirely new money? So Hiniach mana Matsumasayim Chulin Meiser Sheni Rom Zebazeh Rebbe. Rebbe says it's the initial money of Meiser Sheni. Then there was another mana of Chulin that was added onto it. So you have a taruvas, a mixture of Meiser Sheni and Chulin. So what do you do? Therefore, you have to take another mana of Chulin, and you say wherever the Meiser Sheni is, you're pointed onto this money. This new money has now the Kedushas Meiser Sheni, and the mana and the Masayim that you have in the box, rather the Masayim in the box is Chulin. We say that it's a taruvas. We say it's the original mana is Meiser Sheni plus he forgot, the person didn't realize, and he just put in some other money into the box, and you have a mixture of the two monies. That's what Rebbe said. However, the Chum say that all the money is chulin. It's a person who normally would not mix together manos of chulin and manos meiser. So therefore, we don't assume, like Rebbe says, that there's a mixture over here. We would assume rather the Chum say that he removed the original mana of meiser, and all the money that he put over here is chulin. So therefore, how does that translate to our case? Well, according to Rebbe, you'd say that you put down 9, that you found 10, and therefore you say, well, the original chometz that you had is here. There's something else that was added to it, so you don't have to check the house. According to Rebbe, therefore, you don't have to do another bedika because the original chometz is still here. But according to the chachamim, we say no, that this is not what you put down over there. You put down now and you find 10. We would have to be chayshish that the original 9 that you put there has been totally replaced. The original 9 is somewhere in the house, and therefore you have to now check the house for that chometz. This 10 is an entirely new batch. So you have to do bedika, and you have to do the bedika and check for these 9 pieces. The next case is the reverse of that. You put down 10 and you only find 9. That's compared to the Sefer. The sign you learn in the Sefer, in the case of the Meiser, you put down a Masayim and you only found a Mana, then Mana, Munach, Mana, Mutal. Diver Rebbe. Rebbe says, similar to what we said before, that we say, well, the original one is here, and then we say that it's a Mana, Munach, Mana, Mutal. You put down a 2, a Masayim, you only found 1, you say 1 was removed, but the original one is here. So that's what Rebbe is saying. The Chum say I call chul, and the Chum say no. that this is an entirely new batch. And therefore the Mosayim is removed, and this is Hakol Chulin, this is something new, it's all Chulin. So according to Rebbe, in the box, if you put down Mosayim, you found a Mana, you assume the one is removed, one has remained, and the one that remains is Meiser. According to the Chachamim, say it's all been removed, this is something new, and it's all Chulin. Now how does it relate to our case? According to Rebbe, you only have to do a Bedika, but you only have to do a Bedika for one. Because if you say that you put 10 and you find 9, you say the original 9 are there. And therefore 1 is in the house. So you have to do a Bedika only for 1. Now, if you find that 1, now Taisa says, this is Rebbe Lishitosa, where he argued on Shimon Gamliel. It's Rebbe Lishitosa that says that if you find the 1, you can assume that is the one that was originally from what you put aside from the 10. So you can then assume that this is the one that was missing, just like he said in the Machlekes that we learned before by the Kever, the Machlekes of Shimon Gamliel. So according to Rebbe, you say that there was 10, you found 9, you say this 9 is from the original 9. And 1 is missing. If you find the 1, that's all. You don't have to do more Bedika. But according to Chachamim, you say, no, this is an entirely new batch. And therefore, you have to search the house for all 10 pieces, because you assume that the original batch is somewhere in the house, and this is a new batch of 9. So you have to do Bedika for all 10 pieces.